In October of 1887, on a bald stretch of Nebraska prairie, every sensible man was building upward. They raised frame walls, they nailed on clapboard, they lifted their roofs high enough to catch whatever mercy the wind might bring. Anton Marek did the opposite. He took a shovel to the grass and started cutting a room into the ground. Not a cellar, not a storm pit, a home. By the third day, the rectangle was 11 feet wide, 17 feet long, and nearly 4 feet deep. Anton stood at the bottom of it with his boots in the black soil, stacking the first heavy blocks of prairie sod along the edge. The men passing on the wagon road slowed down to stare. One of them laughed and said, "Marek's building a house for badgers." Another said, "No. Badgers know better." The joke reached the county office before the roof was even started. Harland Pike, deputy assessor for the district, rode out with a pencil, a leather ledger, and the grave expression of a man who believed numbers could explain anything worth knowing. Anton had declared the improvement value at $4.18. $4 for a house, a few nails, a stovepipe, 2 small panes of glass, 1 latch, and everything else taken from the land under his feet. Harlan did not even dismount at first. He looked down into the pit, then across the prairie at the new frame houses standing bright and thin in the sun. "Mr. Marek," he said, "the land office asks for a dwelling, not a hole." Anton rested both hands on the handle of his spade. His shirt was stiff with dust. His palms were split from cutting sod. His English came slowly, but the answer did not. "The wind owns the walls above ground," he said. "I am building where the wind cannot count." Nobody knew what to do with that sentence, so they laughed harder. They called it Anton's $4 burrow. They said his wife would refuse to sleep in it. They said the first rain would drown him. They said the first hard freeze would finish what his foolishness had started. But Anton kept digging. And that winter, the men with the proper houses would learn that a wall can look expensive and still know nothing. Anton Marek had not come to Nebraska looking for novelty. He came from a Moravian village where poor farmers had always understood one plain fact. The earth was not dead beneath them. It was slow to warm, slow to cool, slow to surrender what it had stored. In the old country, his grandfather had kept beets, onions, apples, seed grain, and babies alive under earthen roofs while frost silvered the fields above. The shelters were plain, half-buried things, walls of turf and clay, roofs stitched with grass roots, doors tucked low against the weather. They were not admired. They simply worked. Nebraska punished anyone who confused fashion with shelter. Anton learned that during his first winter on the claim. The land company had supplied a temporary board shack, 20 feet long, 12 feet wide, and so thin a person could hear the grass scraping under the wall plates. In July, the shack baked. In December, it betrayed them. The north wind found every seam. It blew flour dust across the table. It lifted ash from the stove and carried it in little gray snakes across the floor. Anton's wife, Clara, stuffed rags into the cracks until her fingers went numb. The stove burned all day, and still the corners glittered with frost. Their youngest boy slept in his coat. Their eldest girl cried when she stepped from the straw tick onto the floorboards because the boards felt as if they had been laid over ice. But the memory that stayed with Anton was smaller than pain. It was Clara's yeast crock. She had kept a sour sponge alive for bread through the crossing, through the rail depot, through the first hungry months of settlement. It was a poor woman's inheritance, carried in a clay jar and fed with careful pinches of flour. One January morning, Anton found her at the table with the crock in her lap. She had tried to stir it. The spoon stood upright in the frozen mass. No roof that let bread turn to stone deserved to be called a roof. From that morning on, Anton stopped thinking of the shack as a house. It was a crate with a chimney. It could shed rain, it could hold furniture, it could impress an assessor from the road. But it could not keep life from freezing. The other settlers blamed the winter. Anton blamed the design. Their houses stood on piers, with cold air licking underneath the floors. Their walls were boards, paper, gaps, and hope. Heat rose to the ceiling, found the roof, and escaped. The stove fought the sky, and the sky always had more room. A family could burn a wagon load of cottonwood and still wake to ice in the wash basin. The problem was not that the prairie was empty. The problem was that the houses were floating on top of the one thing that could have steadied them. So when autumn came, Anton began again. First, he cut the rectangle into a south-facing slope, where rain could run away from the door. He threw the topsoil to one side and saved it, because soil was not waste to him. It was the outer skin of the building. Then he hitched his mare to a breaking plow and sliced the prairie open. The sod came up in thick ribbons, tough with buffalo grass roots and needle grass, each strip woven tight as a mat. Anton and Clara cut those strips into blocks, most of them 18 inches long, a foot wide, and 4 inches thick. Fresh sod was heavier than it looked. Clara could lift 1 block at a time. Anton lifted 2 when Pride was watching, and 1 when it was not. Their children carried the smaller pieces and packed loose earth into the gaps. Course by course, the walls rose from the bottom of the pit. Not high above the land, but thick, nearly 30 inches in places. Grass side down for the lower courses, staggered seams, clay pressed into cracks, a doorway on the south, 2 windows no larger than a dish towel. Harlan Pike visited twice in those weeks. The first time, he warned Anton about drainage. The second time, he warned him about the law. The Homestead Act does not reward experiments, Harlan said, standing at the edge with his ledger open. A claim needs visible improvement. A frame house tells a man something from a mile away. Anton looked at the low walls, then at the empty sky moving above them. From a mile away, he said, a man cannot feel the cold. That irritated Harland more than an insult would have, because Harland was not cruel. He was practical in the narrow way practical men often are. He trusted what could be itemized: lumber, hardware, freight, labor, cash paid out. A $200 house had to be better than a $4 house because 200 was more than 4. The ledger gave him no column for warmth, no column for silence, no column for a child sleeping without mittens. Anton built the roof in late October. He laid cottonwood poles across the walls, close enough that a man could not push his boot between them. Over those he laid willow brush, then hay, then a skin of sod with the grass turned upward. Last came the saved topsoil, packed over the roof and shaped so rain would roll away. After a week, the roof looked wounded. After 3 weeks, it looked alive. A green fuzz appeared over it, then little blades, as if the prairie were closing its hand over the house and accepting it back. From the road, the place hardly looked built at all. Only a low door, 2 square windows, and a crooked stovepipe gave it away. The proper houses stood like white boxes on the horizon. Anton's house sat low and dark, less an object on the land than a decision inside it. What Harland Pike could not see was the arithmetic that mattered. Air on the plains was violent. It could swing from thaw to killing cold with a speed that made men feel personally hunted. But Earth moved on a different clock. Several feet down, below the worst of the daily swings, the ground held close to the low 50s. Not warm enough for comfort by itself, but far warmer than a January wind screaming across open snow. Anton had tied his house to that slow temperature. The floor was not a plank bridge over cold air, it was earth. The walls were not thin boards arguing with weather. They were thick sod and clay. The roof was not a shingle lid bleeding heat into the sky. It was a heavy blanket of soil. A frame shack had to win every hour. Anton's house only had to not lose quickly. That is the secret of thermal mass. It does not perform like fire. It performs like patience. A stove gives heat fast and loses it fast. A thin wall obeys the weather fast. But a heavy wall resists. It slows the change. It stores the warmth. It makes the cold spend itself inch by inch. Anton did not have the words engineers would use later. He did not speak of earth coupling or passive heat exchange or thermal flywheels. He only knew this. Above ground, winter was a thief with open hands. Below the grass roots, winter had to knock. For a while, the new house remained a county joke. Men asked if Anton hung pictures on the ceiling because his walls were mud. They asked if Clara swept the floor or planted it. They asked if the children had learned to whistle so their father could find them underground. Clara heard all of it at the general store. She answered none of it. She had washed their quilts inside the new house and watched them dry without freezing stiff. She had set a cup of water near the wall overnight and found it liquid in the morning. She had fed the yeast crock and seen the living bubbles rise again under its cloth. A joke cannot compete with that kind of proof, but a county can take longer to convince than a kitchen. In November, Harland made his preliminary notation. He wrote the cost exactly as declared, $4.18. Then, in the margin, he added, questionable dwelling, inspection advised. That note made its way east with other paperwork. Anton knew what it meant. If the improvement was rejected, the claim could be challenged. Another man with cash, lumber, and friends in town might take the land Anton had broken by hand. That was the real cold in the house that winter. Not the weather, the possibility that a man could solve the right problem and still lose because the official form asked the wrong question. Then January came. On the morning of the 12th, the air felt almost gentle. Snow softened underfoot. Children in nearby settlements walked to school without the thick scarves their mothers had ordered them to wear. Men joked that the worst of winter had passed. By afternoon, the northern sky turns the color of lead. A wall of weather came over the plains so fast that the horizon disappeared. Snow did not fall, it flew sideways. The temperature collapsed. Wet tracks froze hard. Men who had walked to a barn 30 yards away lost sight of their own lamps. The blizzard made every building confess what it really was. In the frame houses, windows glazed over from the inside. Doors swelled and jammed. Stovepipes roared. Children were pulled away from outer walls because frost crawled along the boards. The Kessler family burned a ladder when the woodpile vanished under drift. The Rourkes tore feed sacks into strips and nailed them over the north wall. At the Wilcox place, a pail of milk froze with a dipper handle trapped inside it, sticking up at an angle as if the cold had signed its name. By midnight, nobody cared how pretty a house looked from the road. They cared which walls could hold. Inside Anton Marek's low earthen house, the storm sounded far away. Not absent, never absent. It moved over them as a deep pressure, a living weight across the roof. Sometimes wind struck the door hard enough to rattle the latch. Sometimes snow hissed over the little south windows, but the room itself stayed still. Clara had hung a lamp from a ceiling pole. Its flame did not lean. The children sat close to the stove, not because they were freezing, but because fire still drew people, the way stories did. Anton fed the stove 3 small pieces of cottonwood, then closed the damper. That was all. No frantic chopping, no furniture broken for fuel, no quilts nailed to walls, no prayer that the next gust would spare the cracks. The walls did not feel warm to the hand. That was the strange part. They felt steady, dense, uninterested in the panic outside. The floor never became ice. The yeast crock sat near the inner shelf with a cloth tied around its mouth. By morning, it was still alive. Harland Pike arrived after the storm had weakened, not because he wanted to be proven wrong, but because his job had turned grim. He had spent 2 days counting losses. Frozen chickens, split water barrels, root cellars that had failed, children coughing under damp quilts, old people whose hands shook too badly to write their own damage claims. At each place he opened his ledger and made neat marks beside untidy suffering. When he reached Anton's claim, he expected silence. Instead, he found a thin, clean line of smoke coming from the low mound. He knocked. Anton opened the door, and warm air touched Harlan's face. Not the choking heat of a stove being abused, not the raw blast of a room fighting for survival. A soft, even warmth. Harlan stepped inside and stopped speaking. The children were awake. Clara was kneading dough. The lamp was clear. No frost laced the walls. No ice rimmed the water pail. Harland looked at the stove first, searching for the trick. It was barely burning. Then he looked at the walls, then the floor, then the crock on the shelf. Clara saw his eyes and untied the cloth. The sour sponge moved under the spoon, alive, soft, working. Harlan stared at it as though he had been handed a legal document written in a language older than law. He had seen milk frozen solid beside roaring fires that week. He had seen potatoes hard enough to split if dropped. He had seen proper houses fail with respectable receipts in their drawers. And here, in the cheapest dwelling on his list, bread was still rising. Anton said nothing. He did not need to. The proof was making its own statement. Harland removed one glove and touched the side of the water pail. Then he dipped 2 fingers into it. Liquid. He held those wet fingers in the air for a second. That was the moment the ledger lost. Not because Harland hated rules, because he finally saw that the rule had measured expense and called it value. He opened the book on the table. The old note was still there. Questionable dwelling, inspection advised. Harlan took out his pencil and struck a dark line through it. Underneath, he wrote a new sentence. Substantial sod and earth dwelling. Warm, dry, occupied, and fit for residence. He hesitated over the value.
$4.18 was the cost.
But it was not the worth. So he did something no column had taught him to do. He wrote, "Improvement accepted." By spring, the joke had changed direction. Men who had laughed at the hole began asking about the roof angle, How deep was the floor? How thick were the walls? Did the grass grow through? Did the inside smell damp? Where did the smoke draw best? How did Anton keep rain from running into the door? Anton answered all of it. He did not dress the knowledge in mystery. He did not make himself into a prophet. He drew a cross-section in the dirt with a stick and showed them what he had done. Slope the site, bury the north, face the door south, build thick, not tall, keep the roof heavy, let water leave, let the ground help. That was all. By the next winter, 5 more families had dug into slopes. 2 others bermed their existing walls with sod. One widow, who could not afford milled lumber after her husband died, built a smaller version with the help of 3 neighbors and kept her children through February on less fuel than she had once burned in a week. None of those homes looked impressive from a wagon road. That became the point. The Prairie had tricked settlers into worshiping what could be seen from a distance. Straight walls, painted boards, roof peaks, the upright shape of civilization. But weather did not care about appearances. Weather entered through weakness, through gaps, through pride, through designs copied from places that had never met a plains blizzard. Anton Marek had not invented a miracle. He had remembered a relationship. The ground was not empty space beneath the house. It was the largest part of the house. Decades later, engineers would give his instinct clean names: earth-sheltered construction, thermal mass, ground-coupled heat exchange, passive survivability. They would draw diagrams that proved what Clara's yeast crock had already shown. A building does not become intelligent because it costs more. It becomes intelligent when it listens to the forces that will test it. That was Anton's offense. Not poverty, not stubbornness, not foreignness. He had refused the county's favorite mistake, confusing height with strength. The men around him built where the wind could see them. Anton built where the earth could remember. And when the blizzard came, the wind inspected every wall on the prairie. It found the expensive ones first. It found Anton's last. He did not beat the prairie by rising above it. He survived by letting the ground remember for him.